Every morning, their front door was unlocked so they stayed up to watch. It started subtly. Every morning for the past week, Greg and Marissa awoke to find their front door slightly ajar, no signs of forced entry, no damage, nothing missing. Just open. Like someone had entered, or waited for them to. They lived in a quiet neighborhood tucked at the edge of town, surrounded by tall pines and winding cul-de-sacs. Greg taught English at the high school. Marissa ran a home bakery. Their days were filled with coffee, shared glances, and small, good things. The door didn't fit. At first, they blamed themselves. Maybe Greg forgot to lock up. Maybe Marissa didn't pull it shut all the way. But by the third morning, when they each swore they'd checked it before bed, doubt took root. They tried everything: new locks, deadbolts, even a camera. But the door kept opening. Quietly. Persistently. And the camera? It glitched every night around 3:10 a.m. static. Then black. Then nothing. So they decided to stay awake. That night, Greg brewed a full pot of coffee and Marissa curled under a blanket on the couch. The lights dimmed to shadows. They didn't speak much. Just listened. The house was quiet, but the kind of quiet that pressed against your chest. At 3:12 a.m., the doorknob turned. They both froze. No sound from outside. No footsteps. Just the slow creak of the knob, and the door easing open smooth, like it had been rehearsed 100 times. Greg rose slowly. There was nothing in the doorway. Just the dark. Stillness. Then they saw it, not someone, but something. A small object, placed carefully in the center of their doormat. A single, dusty key. Not one they recognized. No note. No context. Just the key. Greg stepped outside to look around. Nothing but fog and silence. But across the street, behind the veil of mist, a single porch light flicked off. The next day, Greg visited the neighbor whose light had gone out, Mrs. Langford, a retired widow who mostly kept to herself. She didn't answer at first. When she finally opened the door, her eyes were red-rimmed and tired. "You saw something, didn't you?" she said, before Greg could speak. He froze. "What do you mean?" She hesitated, glanced behind her as if afraid someone else might hear. Then she said, "Don't use the key. Whatever you do." Before Greg could ask more, she shut the door. He returned home, key still in his pocket, heart thudding. That night, they placed it in a drawer. But neither of them could stop thinking about it. And the next morning? The door was open again. This time, there was a note. One word, scribbled in jagged black ink. "Remember." They searched the key. No matches in any of their lockboxes. But Marissa had a memory from years ago of an abandoned house just beyond the woods behind their neighborhood. She thought it had burned down when she was a kid. Her mother never let her near it. But when they walked out to the edge of the trees that afternoon, there it was, old, decaying, still standing. Half swallowed by vines. Boarded windows. A charred roof. The key fit the rusted gate perfectly. Inside, the house was a mausoleum of memories. Dust hung like fog. Old toys on shelves. A faded photograph of two children's faces scratched out. And in the far corner, something impossible. A chair facing a mirror, and carved into the wall above it, the word again. "Remember." Marissa reached into her coat. Her fingers trembled. She didn't know why, but the place felt familiar. Like something lost. Like something taken. That night, the dreams returned. Marissa woke screaming, gasping for air. She couldn't breathe. Greg held her, confused, until she whispered, "It was a closet. They locked me in a closet." She didn't know where the memory came from. In the days that followed, more fragments returned: a woman's voice humming through the floorboards, the scent of burnt wood, a door slamming shut. Always a door. Greg began to unravel too. The key disappeared from the drawer only to reappear on his pillow. The camera glitched again. This time, not just blackness, but a flicker of something. A child's silhouette. And then the door opened in the middle of the day. Inside was the same child they'd seen on the screen, but when they blinked, he was gone. Desperate for answers, they returned to Mrs. Langford. She let them in this time. Her house smelled like cedar and old grief. "I thought it ended when the fire took the house," she whispered. "But it doesn't end. Not when no one listens." She told them about the children. About the foster home that once operated in the house at the edge of the woods, the same one Marissa had remembered. About how it had been shut down quietly after a fire claimed 3 lives and left 1 survivor. A girl. No name. No family. Moved away and forgotten. Sometimes places remember, Mrs. Langford said, even when people try not to. Marissa sat frozen. Greg turned to her. What if that girl wasn't just some kid? What if it was you? That night, they didn't sleep. Marissa walked the house slowly, touching the walls, listening. She stopped at the front door. It keeps opening, she whispered, because it never closed for me. At 3:12 a.m., it opened again. But this time, Marissa didn't freeze. She stepped outside, barefoot, into the mist. Greg followed. The air was thick and cold. But in front of them, in the middle of the street, stood the boy. The same boy from the glitch. From the hallway. He looked up at Marissa with hollow eyes and mouthed a word. Help. Then he turned and walked. They followed him, past the trees, back to the house. The key was in Marissa's hand again. She didn't remember picking it up. Inside, the boy disappeared into the darkness. They followed down into the basement. There, behind a false wall, they found a narrow door. Padlocked. The final keyhole. Marissa unlocked it. Inside was a small, windowless room, and on the floor, old drawings taped to the walls. Children with hollow faces. Names scratched in. And in the center of it all, a faded folder. Marissa Reynolds, ward of the state. Case closed. She was the girl. The fire. The screams. The locked door. She had been pulled from the wreckage, alone. The system erased the rest. Gave her a new name. New parents. She never remembered. Until the door opened. Until the house called her back. Until the other children, the ones left behind, reminded her. Marissa never looked at the front door the same way again. They sold the house a month later, moved to the city. The door never opened on its own again. But sometimes, just after 3 a.m., she wakes up with the sound of a key turning in her ears. And a whisper. Thank you for remembering.